All right, could we reconvene, please? Ollie, ollie, income free. The music is stopping. You need a chair. Folks, could you, Paul Jaley, Paul, would you begin to round them up, head them up, move them out? It's me, love, I think. Okay. I don't want to start and have people wandering in. Andale, andale, arriba, arriba. What? How do I say that in French? Who speaks French? I speak Hawaiian. Wiki, wiki. No, that's good. I'm with the tea. Good. All right, they're coming, they're coming, they're coming. How many of you, like me, needs interludes of absolute nonsense in the middle of all this stuff? I come up for air. If you don't need to come up for air, you don't understand what's really going on. That's how I know who knows what's happening, is you're gasping for air and glad to get it. Isn't that right, Randall? Amen. Okay, Doug Jaden, who is working on the currency side of things, alternative currencies, is introducing our good friend Uli Kortsch.
Well, I have to say, when I was asked to introduce Uli, my thought went to, what do I say? What do I say about the guy? I mean, a lot of you know him already. I could read his bio. He's got a very deep bio. He's been involved in a lot of things. He's met with dignitaries and ministers of finance, and he's got organizations he's been involved with, 20 years in YWAM. All of those things are true, but what I thought I would spend just a moment on is telling you a story about who he is. Who is this guy, who has come to this position where he's regularly addressing the Statesmen Project on these issues of money and monetary policy? And I met him about 3.5 years ago, and he was giving one of his talks, and I'm going, wow, because I'm interested in economics and currency. I thought, well, I can learn from that guy. And I didn't have a chance to sit down and talk with him until 3 years ago at the Statesmen Project meeting. And we got introduced, we went out and had dinner, and then we went back to his hotel room and spent 3.5 hours talking about this issue called money and monetary systems. And what I got to see was, oh wow, yeah, I can learn a lot from this guy about economics and money and monetary systems, and I can't even begin to fit in my brain everything he's got in his. That's just reality. But what I got to see was a progression of how God uses somebody's entire life history and their arc to prepare them to do battle on a stage and with people that are dealing with principalities and powers at the highest level that we will deal with on earth, because those are the principalities and powers that occupy the oversight and management of this abomination of a monetary system we have. And as I listened to Uli talk about how he would, he was involved with, crazy things like saving some guy in a boat by pulling him on a boat, and how that relationship, introduced him to another person that got him and moved him into more and more relationship, to now where he's at the point where he's literally interfacing with people in the International Monetary Fund and the Federal Reserve, and he's giving speeches, and he has friends, and he's organizing this thing in Switzerland. It's an amazing story. This is God putting his hand on a man who has sacrificed, who cares deeply about the issue of what we're dealing with here and the enormity of it, and just wanted to let you know God is preparing and has prepared him for it. So, Uli, my friend, I love you. Take it away.
Well, I need to explain a little bit of what Doug just said. You see, you need to understand I'm a specialist. A specialist is somebody who studies more and more about less and less until he knows absolutely everything about nothing. So, you know what we're going to do? We're going to follow the money. Whatever that means. Thank you. What's money? What are we following? I have said for decades that money, listen carefully to what I'm about to say, is the most spiritual thing in the universe. Most spiritual thing in the universe. Because it's a force for either good or evil. It's not a human being. Human beings aren't things. Okay. So I can use money to force somebody who couldn't care less about God, who doesn't believe in my principles, who thinks I'm wrong. And I can force them to do something that I want them to do. Because I say, hey, Joe, I'll pay you $100. Would you please do this? And he'll do it. All I've done is paid him $100. I've just given him money. So money is an interesting thing. And we forget the power of what this is really all about. It's a long history of money. We've got tally sticks. I don't know if you know, I'm not going to spend too much time. Very interesting. By the way, up to about 100 years ago, they were still used. They were back to Paleolithic times. Can you believe it? And there were parts of the world that used tally sticks up to 100 years ago. What it is simply a stick with markings on it that represent certain things that are accepted. And then you break the stick in half. You tear it in half. And you keep a half and they keep a half. Okay, and the markings are identical on both sides. Brilliant little system. And if somebody comes along counterfeiting it, and you try to put the stick together and it doesn't fit, it's no good. But I have the stick that fits. See, it works. So we still, hey, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. We still use that word. In the Bible, money is coral. If you look at the actual Hebrew word, most of the time it's coral. Cattle in Africa, cigarettes in World War II, coins, paper money, all the way back to China, etc. So money is kind of a weird thing. What is money really? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a computer entry. That's all it is. You think you have money in your pocket. I mean, to be technical about it, we call it currency, all right? But really all it is an entry in a computer under a simple set of rules. And if you follow the rules, you can type a 1 with 6 zeros behind it, and it's real. It's all it takes. And you have got to get that in your head. You've got to understand what we've done with this thing called money today. Okay? That's really, really important to everything I want to tell you about here. All right, kingdom. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. How much do we actually believe that? I think that's my challenge to people all the time. Do you actually believe that? Are you willing to speak out? Are you willing to take actions? Are you willing to meet with people, talk with people? Are you willing to do what it takes in order to actually actualize that? Okay? That's really the deal. All right, where are we going? I'm going to give you a global overview, much less global than Mark's, more with an emphasis on the U.S. And then I want to talk about matters of hope, prayer, and courage. By the way, that's you know the order. First, there's hope, because if you don't have any hope, there's no prayer. Okay, the two sort of go hand in hand. I realize, but you've got to have hope, and then courage, and then some personal responses, and then community or city responses. So I'm afraid I'm going to start with the bad news. I've got a lot of bad news. And then we're going to look at the good news, and I've got even better good news. I mean, come on, you know, that's all right, all right. Whoops, sorry about that. Let's start with the Great Recession, because we're still living under the shadow of that thing. Oh, by the way, let me give you a definition. We were talking about jobs earlier on. There's a very simple, I don't know if you know technically what is the difference between a recession and a depression. I will tell you right now what it is. It's really very simple. A recession is when you lose your job. A depression is when I lose my job. That's the difference. All right, it's as simple as that. Okay. Now you understand the depth of economic knowledge that I have. We're going to start with causes that you were told that caused this. Then we're going to try to deal with root causes, and then we're going to look at results. All right. These are the causes as per the news. This is what you're told. We had the Great Recession, 2007, 2008. I mean, it started, November kind of idea of 2007, and then went all the way through 2008, really until the beginning of 2009. We were told there was too much debt. We were told that there were wrong incentives for mortgage financing agents. And we were told there was poor banking oversight, especially with respect to ratios, tier 1 to tier ratios. I'm not going to get technical about that. Is any of that wrong? No. This is all true. Was there too much debt? There was massively too much debt. There was a wrong kind of debt. The debt was structured wrong. The debt was structured in such a way that if there would have been a slight switch in the economy, which there was, you wouldn't have been able to pay it back. This is all true. Okay? You know what a magician does? When he pulls a rabbit out of his ear or beats me, whatever it is, he makes you concentrate on something else. And you concentrate on the other issue. All of a sudden, he's got a rabbit. And wow, what? How did that happen? Or when you saw the woman in half, or all these other things that magicians do. What they do, the trick of magic is ladies and gentlemen, look at this, look at this, and you go, here. Oh wow, this is magic. This is all true. I totally agree with this. This is all true. But it's truth with a small t versus truth with a capital T. See? The question is, what caused all these causes? That's really the issue. Okay? And we do not deal in that. We are not told that because you are not supposed to understand that. Because we as smart people, we work that out. And if we were to tell you how it is I actually produce my magic, well, then it wouldn't be magic anymore. So I'm not going to tell you. That's how it works. Is it deliberate? For most of the people, no, it's not. What I'm trying to say is, I mean, really good people that are trying to do the best that they can within the job that's been given to them, within a system that I have real problems with. But they're honorable people. They're not trying to deceive you. But there is a layer that is trying to deceive you, and that is actively deceiving you. And the point of what Mark and I and Dennis and others are trying to do is to try to open some of that deception up. See, here's the problem. You're still living in the vortex of the Great Recession. It hasn't gone away. It has not gone away. The standard American, pretty well global, business cycle is a V. You have this crash, and then you come back up again. We do not have that. We're not experiencing that. So here's some of the reasons as to why. What are the real or root causes? Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is the biggest root cause. It's our fractional reserve banking system. I've spoken on that here a number of times before. I'm not going to go into great depth here, but the basic issue, especially over the last 50 years, and I think the next, over the last 50 years, more than 90%, 95% of all our money has become what we call bank money. There's a difference between bank money and currency. Bank money is all, 100%, all of it, created by debt. There must be debt. If there is no debt, there is no money. Okay? If we were to pay all of our debt back, the US dollar would cease to exist, the bank money portion of it. And I've had arguments with a guy in the IMF where I said, it's 97%. He goes, no, Uli, you're wrong. It's 99%. I figured, okay, forget it. Let's just say it's more than 95%, and I know I got it. Okay? This stuff is all computer entries. Okay? We have about $70 trillion in existence today. That is dollars within the U.S. financial system. That is what we used to call euro dollars. We use that word anymore. You don't hear it very much. Euro dollars were American dollars that were not within the American financial system. That's why they were called euro dollars. Well, today the whole world uses what we used to call euro dollars, so it's stupid calling them euro dollars. And then we have reserves, trillions of dollars of reserves. You add all that up. That money comes from debt that you and I have had to accumulate. Okay? If we do not accumulate debt, there are no US dollars. And that is the dastard methodology of this particular system. Okay? Now, you say to yourself, well, I don't get it. Why is it worse today than 20 years ago? It's because, so we've had a Federal Reserve System for 104 years. What is it, 1975? Right, 104 years. And we were basically on a fractional reserve system before then also. And you say, well, we used to be on a gold standard. I'll talk to you about that in just a minute. But what's happened over the last 50 years especially is well, for instance, here, me. I'll show you what. So I walk around, I took my money. Here's my money. I don't have any cash on me. I mean, there's some in my hotel room. But so I decided, okay, well, I'll take my driver's license just in case, and I brought my cash, and that's how we live today. Okay, we used to have $100,000 bills. Did you know that? Probably didn't know that. Now, they were never in public circulation. They were used bank to bank. But we certainly had $1,000 bills that were in regular circulation. Well, then we had $500 bills. We don't have the 1,000 anymore. We don't have 500 more. Now we're down to 100, and they're talking about getting rid of the $100 bills. Because we're all gone to bank money. So this is a shift that has occurred in spite of the fact that we've had this kind of an economic system for a long time. There's a parabolic buildup, okay, an exponential point of no return that we are coming to. And it's because the structure of what we've done electronically. I'm not saying it's bad. I use it. Well, you saw I use it, obviously. But it has changed the way the whole system works. Okay? It's all debt. It's all debt-driven now. So let's go back to the root causes. There's not only bad agent incentivization, which is what those mortgage agents who created, all they cared about was their little bit that they're going to get, their $1,000, whatever, to sell you an ARM, adjustable rate mortgage, right? And it's the ARMs that killed us. But boy, I'll tell you, those agents made a lot of money on those ARMs, and that's why they sold them to you. That's agent incentivization. The problem is the system gives wrong bank incentivization. Okay? So if you have a banker who's a wonderful man of God, who does everything right, who is totally clean, totally straight, he is still, the system itself incentivizes not only him, but the whole system incentivizes that particular bank in the wrong way. And I can go into details, but that's really not the point. I just want to give you that. And then finally, we have the inability of the central bank, the Federal Reserve Bank or the European Central Bank or the Japanese Central Bank to control the money supply. Okay? There's a more and more we are out of control as to the way the things are happening. And I'll show you some of the things that we've done in order to do that. So here we are. Glory, the results. Okay? Uh, where'd that come from? That is the result. That is the result. The complexification, that word I'm sure exists, of what we have done for banks is beyond belief. Because what this reminds me of, I actually used this in a talk I gave at the Fed. When trying to invent clocks that work on ships. And so you start with a pendulum, but every time the ship moves, the pendulum moves. So what you do is you create a countermeasure, which has a pendulum in the opposite direction, so that you have two pendulums going together in the opposite direction. But then the ship can not only turn this way, but the ship can also turn this way. So you create a spring that goes over here. By the time he was finished, this is real, he created a clock that was basically a yard cubic, and it needed a crane to move it on board the ship. That's for real. I've got the pictures. I have all the information on that. And then what happened, he has a great insight, and he created this. And this is the problem. We have a different way of doing things. I was at an economic conference 3 years ago, something I can't remember when. And the director of research for the St. Louis Fed spoke. And I can't even remember what he was speaking on. But in the middle of his talk, I've never forgotten this, he suddenly stopped cold. And he said, you know, we don't have to do it this way. There's a complete different way of running our whole banking and monetary system. And on paper, it looks fantastic. And I go, oh, baby, you and I are talking. So I went up to him and talked afterwards. And he said, the problem is we don't have a jurisdiction where this is actually being done. That isn't, actually there is a very small, but it's not a major jurisdiction. And so that's one of the things that I'm involved in. Let's go back to the results. So I've numbered the results. This is result number 1. As you know, 12 million Americans lose their home. The stuff that we're talking about, this money system, it's kind of like, maybe the way to look at it is television. Right now, this room is filled full of television pictures. The room is completely full of television pictures. And you can't see any of them because your brain is not geared to the electronic signals, the electromagnetic spectrum that is sending those. But if I was to put a television set up right here with rabbit ears, it would pick the picture up and it would see it. Our money system is like that. You live in that environment, and unless you're attuned to it and you have antennas to it, you do not know what is actually going on. But it affects you suddenly. All right? Here's result number 2. We have this animal called the Dodd-Frank. So to date, the one bill to date has created 20,000 pages of regulations. Okay? And I am told that at least another 20,000, another 10,000 are anticipated. Pages of regulations coming out of only one bill, which came out of the Great Recession. Okay? It is killing everything but the largest banks. 2,000 of them have gone bust, have been forced to merge since the Great Recession. So I was talking to the chairman of one of the banks, and he said, 99% of our board time is spent trying to live with these regulations. He says, Uli, can you imagine what it's like? So you're running a little bank, and along comes the Fed or the controller of the currency, whoever is particularly overseeing you, and he drops a 1,000-page manual for your little bank onto your desk. What do you think? What does that do to that bank? They've got to live up with this. And the problem is, not only monetarily, they could end up in jail. I mean, there's some real consequences to this idiocy that we have created, okay? 50% of all loans to small business are made through the community banks. That is directly from the Fed. I didn't make that up, okay? Small firms account for 50% of all non-government employees, and what are we doing? We're killing these banks. And it is deliberate. Jamie Dimon, the chairman of J.P. Morgan, said, Dodd-Frank's the best thing that's ever happened to us because it kills all the competition. Kills all the this is Glory! The government has finally, man, they've made us to be the big sever. All right? This is the very opposite of what it's intended to be. And it's the small banks, they did not cause the problem. It's the large banks that did. All right, so remember I told you one of the problems, the causes of the Great Recession was debt. So we now have more debt, and we call it the hair of the dog. Whoa! You see that? Hair of the dog, it's more of a British expression. What it simply means is, well, I'll give you the written. It means if you've had a hangover, and because you got too drunk the night before, the way to solve the hangover is the moment you get up, you get more drink. And they call it the hair of the dog. That's what we've done with debt. So I thought, it's kind of a weird expression. Where'd this come from? Because they used to believe that if you created some kind of a potion, if you were bit by a rabid dog and then you drank some of a potion from a hair, that's where that comes from. But the whole point is a hangover. If you have a hangover, then, man, you better have a shot of whiskey first thing in the morning, because that'll sort of help your head. That's what we've done. We have more debt today in real numbers, in nominal numbers, real numbers, and percentage than we did at the end of 2007. This is the hair of the dog. Solve the hangover. You got an alcohol problem? Drink more.
Yes.
That will solve the problem. Okay? That's what we've done. The technical word, if you want to know, we call it a debt hangover. So hangover. So it's sort of the same word. It's kind of interesting because it hangs over the edge. You see, you can't handle it anymore. So this debt is good. This debt is back. It's like coyote in the movie with the. Thank you. Hair of the dog. Yes, debt is rabid and it is toxic. Okay. We have federal and state debt today of about 22 trillion. We hit 20 trillion federal debt just. This is what month are we in? We're September. Thank you. 4 or 5 months ago, we finally officially hit 20. And so I just added the state debt in there. We owe 22 trillion, and Mark's numbers, as you saw, if you take governmental, corporate, and private, we're over 350% today, which is substantially higher than before. Just several things here. I know some of you have heard me before. Let me explain to you what $1 trillion is, which I really can. It's not just a big number. You see all those zeros. That's not what $1 trillion is. This actually makes sense. I think this will make sense to you. If you were to spend $1 million a day, and most of us can get a handle on $1 million. I think we can. So if you were to spend $1 million a day, 365 days of the year, you can get your calculator out and check me if I'm wrong. In what year would you have had to start spending $1 million a day in order to have spent, $1 trillion by today? I'll help you. 500 years before Christ. That is one. That is only one. You know when we will pay this off? We will never pay this off. Okay. The fiscal gap, as Mark has already said, is in the range of 205 trillion. The fiscal gap, it's very simple. If you go out to infinity, so we use net present values, anything beyond about 50, 75 years goes basically to zero. So you go out to infinity, mathematically it's easier to do it that way. So if you go out to infinity to all the contracts that the government has written, and then you go out to infinity to all the taxes and fees, etc., that we expect to have as income, and you subtract those two, you end up with 205 trillion. Let me help you as to what debt is. That really is an explanation of the fiscal gap. I think you'll probably get it. And if you saw my videos, I use that same image. So let's say that you buy a house and you borrow $300,000 to buy the house. I'm just using round numbers. And let's say that your monthly payments are $3,000 a month, whatever. It just doesn't really matter. All right, and so you come to the first month, and the wife says, the kitchen is really ratty. So can we put a new kitchen in? And you go, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So what you do, interest rates on credit cards right now are just nothing, it's nothing. So what you do is you borrow $5,000 on the credit card, and you make your $3,000 mortgage payment, but you borrow $5,000 on the credit card. Well, the next month comes around, and the dog pees on the carpet. And you've got to buy some carpet. That's a whole lot cheaper, but so you only borrow $1,000 on your credit card, but you make your $3,000 payment. Okay, so you keep on going. You get to the end of the year, and you've made every single $3,000 payment on your mortgage, but you've now put $10,000 on your credit card. How much are you in debt? I realize mathematically that you have paid a little bit of principal off during that year out of your 30-year mortgage from the $300,000, but let's just call it zero. Maybe it's $500. It's next to nothing, right? So let's just say you and I, what we would say is we owe the $300,000 on the mortgage, and we now owe $10,000 on our credit cards. So we are in debt for $310,000. It's not right? That's what all of us would say. I think we'd all agree with that. Okay, so let's say that we're the federal government. How much do we owe? Please don't answer unless you're absolutely sure. You only owe $10,000. You don't owe the $300,000. You only owe $10,000 because that's what you put on your credit card. And in government accounting, that's all you owe. And you say, well, excuse me, the government doesn't have a credit card. Yes, it does. They're called treasuries. The government only owes what it has issued in treasuries. It does not owe what it has signed in contracts, because that's not due. It's not due until next year, so therefore we don't owe it. Man, I'd love to live in that kind of an accounting world. I don't have a mortgage. I don't owe anything on my car. Man, I'm free and clear. So the government is free and clear except for $22 trillion. It has put $22 trillion on its credit card. Well, here's another response. Man, I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to have to. Did you know that it's official government policy to destroy 75% of your money in your lifetime? How many of you knew that? Seriously, we've got one person. Two people. Yes. Oh, we have an actuary in the back. That's not fair. This is a fact. I will give you an exact quote. Here it is. From the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee that controls our money, judges that inflation at the rate of 2% is most consistent over the long run Federal Reserve's mandate. You know why? Because of control issues. We have what we technically call a zero bound, which isn't really bound anymore, but we still call it the zero bound. So in order to help control this animal, what we're going to do is we're going to force all of you to lose 75% of your value within 72 years. And this is how it works mathematically. 2% inflation mathematically equals a 50% value reduction every 36 years. So if you have a lifespan of 72 years, you've lost 75% of the value of your money. And that is official government policy. And that's what we're living under. And that people complain. They say, well, Mr. Federal Reserve Bank, you're not doing your job because inflation isn't high enough. You're not destroying the value of our money fast enough. And you read it in the news every day. Okay, time for a joke. We can pay off our past and save for the future as long as we forget about the present. After all that bad news, I thought it's kind of like Shakespeare. Got to have a humor break. All right, now this is interesting. We say we have a really low unemployment rate. So currently, well, it was at 4.3% until last week, and then now it's gone back up to 4.4%. If you follow. By the way, it's U3, which, as far as I'm concerned, is useless. But let's use the U3. I'll argue about U3, U6 right away. This is a very interesting chart. I can't draw on this, which is really too bad. Okay, this is not a time chart, although it kind of time is not on this. Okay, but I'll introduce time in just a minute. So on the vertical axis, you've got the percentage participation rate. This is ages 15 to 55. Less than 2/3 of our population, ages 15 to 55, are actually working. Okay, so it goes from 64.5% down to 62%. You see that, and those are the blue squares. Okay, now. The black line running through it is simply a mathematical approximation of what those blue dots represent. But what's interesting is at the bottom, you'll see the unemployment rate. So you go from 10% all the way down to 4%. What this simply says is that as fewer people work, our unemployment rate drops. Oh, no kidding. Really? Wow, what a great insight. So we've done so well. The Fed has done such a phenomenal job of making us all look so great because we don't have any unemployment. It's because people aren't working. And if you don't work, then you're not unemployed. You did know that, didn't you? Yeah, this makes perfect sense. Okay, by the way, the difference between U3 is what I would call the unemployment rate that we had 20 years ago. U3 is a full-time job, not part-time, multiple jobs, and it means you must have been looking for a job for the last 4 weeks. Okay? Longer than that, oh shucks, you're not unemployed. Multiple jobs, you're not unemployed either. Underemployed, you're not unemployed either. Okay, so we have a thing called U6. So there's U3, U4, U5, U6. U6 ultimately is what I believe our economy is all about today, which is multiple jobs, on and on. The underemployment that we end up having. U3, in case you're wondering, today is 8.9%. That's the real. It was up at 17%. Okay, and you don't read about it. I argued with a Fed guy about this once. I said, why do you guys publish U3? Well, I jolly well know why, because it looks so good. And he says, well, and I said, it should be U6. Our modern economy, we have a U6 economy. We do not have a U3 economy. And he goes, well, the two are parallel. He said that publicly, and I thought, forget it. Plus, I'm only one person in the audience, and let other people, I just kind of roll my eyeballs. All right, result 6. These are still results, okay? This is the omnipotence of the central bank. What it means is today, and for the last 10 years, we read constantly about what the Fed is doing. It's in the news. Who cares what the Fed is doing? Did you care 15 years ago what the Fed was doing? No, you didn't. Today you care. You know what? They're omnipotent as to our unemployment, as to the value of our assets, as to all of those things are now run by the central bank. We don't, for instance, so in paper assets, we don't have what we call price discovery. What is something actually worth? We don't know. We have no idea. Standard stock investing has not worked for the last 10 years. If you were a good value-based stock picker, like the Oracle of Omaha, it doesn't work. And you notice he lost, what was it, $3 billion last year or something. He lost a ton of money. Because you're an idiot if you look at values of stocks and buy stocks and bonds as a result of their values. It is irrelevant. All that matters is what Janet Yellen is going to tell you. The value of the underlying asset has become irrelevant. Okay? Nobody knows what any of this stuff's worth anymore. No idea. We call that price discovery. We're living in a sea of manipulation. And now we're using all those for political gains. Goes up, that's really, really great. It's, I did it. Goes down, you did it. It's all that kind of stuff. It's all manipulated. Okay? That comes directly out of the results of what it is that we've done. By the way, we're in a state of global tightening. This has never, ever ended well. Ever. This isn't just the U.S. Okay, and whatever, we can get technical if you want. The ultimate result, as far as I'm concerned, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, I believe that our economy is basically like a plateau. To me, I like pictures. You can fall off on this side or you can fall off on this side, but you have a plateau in the center where there's relative safety. It's not flat. There's a bit of a curve. There are better times, there are worse times. We can get closer to the edge, further away from the edge, and boy, this is really good. So it's a bit of a curved plateau, but you fall off both sides and you have a depression or a recession, or, we fell off in 2008, okay? And hung on there by the skin of our teeth, okay? Now what's happened is we have narrowed this plateau and narrowed and narrowed and narrowed and narrowed this plateau. So the plateau now looks like this. There isn't any room for error, okay? There isn't any room for black swans, if you Taleb, if you know black swans, okay? It used to be like this. It's now like this. All right, I'm going to tell you why, and here's why. People ask me constantly, they say, okay, you think we're going to have a great crash. Yes, I do. What is going to kick this off? What is the trigger to the event? I get this asked all the time. So I give you 3 pictures. So number 1 is a handgun. You can see the bullet. It's being shot out. Number 2 is a tank, and it just is shot. Number 3 is a missile, and you can tell there are orders of magnitude of destruction here, okay? What initiates, what triggers any of those? This. Now, can I kill you with my finger? No, I can't. But I can kill you with a handgun. I can kill your house with a tank, and I can kill your city with a missile. Now, help me here, please bear with me. I'm going to ask you to do something. I'll use participation now. How many of you have a trigger finger? Please put it straight up in the air. Okay, now hold it, there's a reason as to why I'm doing this. Okay, we all have a trigger finger. Now, look around. Seriously, look around. Okay, look around. How many triggers are there? Okay, you can put your hands down. That's how many possible triggers there are. I have no idea what's going to kick this off. And it doesn't matter. The finger doesn't matter. The amplification is what matters. Okay? We're going to repeat that in just a minute. Here, possible triggers. I don't really care about these anyway, because I have no idea what it's going to be. It could be all sorts of things. As Mark said, on the whole, it's economic. I really agree. Now, I want to give you one story of amplification that I think will give you a bit of an idea. In 1859, we had a coronal mass ejection. That's when a portion of the sun's surface comes shooting out towards us, okay? And it was so strong that it basically fried the telegraph lines in the United States, gave pretty strong electrical shocks to telegraph operators, and 2 or 3 of them may have died. I mean, this was a massive jolt. Okay? How many of you read the book? On July 23rd, 2012, that was 5 years ago, we had a coronal mass ejection of exactly the same power. Now, what's interesting, if this is the sun, and this is the earth, so this is the plane of the earth, okay? This thing didn't shoot up or down. It shot in exactly the plane of the earth. And it missed us by 7 degrees. 7 degrees. Amplification. In 1859, we had the same event happened today. It is estimated that if that were to happen today, it would cost $3 trillion, and it would take 10 years to rebuild our electrical system. I estimate that would kill probably 100 million Americans. Within 3 days, you'd have no food, no gas, no water. How many of you would survive for 10 years? Okay? It would fry your electrical appliances. There would be no communication, depending on exactly where the satellites were, but how many of you can charge your phones for more than 3 days? Forget about 10 years. That, ladies and gentlemen, is amplification. It's exactly the same trigger, the same phenomenon, and the difference in results, this is not an order of magnitude. This is 10 orders of magnitude different. How many orders of magnitude, Jim? All right? That's what I'm trying to say with respect to amplification. Okay, that's the difference. Amplifiers, here's a few of them. Economic amplifiers. I would say, in my mind, the three biggest ones are ETFs, debt, and mark-to-market. Let's start with the bottom one because it makes so much sense. Mark-to-market simply says, by law, financial institutions have to register their value based on the last sale. This makes a lot of sense, right? So if you hold a piece of paper, it must be marked legally with respect to your asset allocation to whatever the last sale was. That is what the market says it's worth. Insanity when things go wrong. During the Great Recession, AAA bonds were worth less than junk bonds. Less. The whole system went backwards. You know why? Because the banks wouldn't sell the AAA paper because they knew there was no market. So all they sold was their junk. So the whole thing went totally, sorry, it's the other way around. I'm sorry, I got that totally backwards. They only sold their AAA because they knew it had real value, and so the last sale was lower than the last sale of the junk because nobody was selling junk because they knew they'd get zero for it, literally zero. Okay? Debt, well, we already talked enough about ETFs. There are now more aggregator ETFs than there are securities on the market. By the way, I use ETFs, so got to be careful here. All right? The beauty of ETFs is that you don't have to think about what it is that you purchase. Somebody else does the allocation for you, and you know they're brilliant, and so you trust them, and so you purchase it. Did you hear what I just said? The beauty of ETFs is you don't have to think about it. You just put, because I know it's the whole system falls apart because if it is all based on a majority of the market actually making true choices, which in an ETF world, which you live in today, doesn't do anymore. So what happens, because you didn't think about buying it, if there's a crash, you don't think about selling it, everybody sells. There are no buyers. You have this huge amplification. I'm waiting for that to happen. It'll happen. Anyway, electrification. There isn't enough time to go through all this stuff. Everything is just fine, ladies and gentlemen. This is the title of a book written by Alexei Yurchak in 2006 about the Soviet Union. Everything was forever until it was no more. And he created a new word called hypernormalization. We live in an economic hypernormalization world. Everything is fine. Relax. I got it all under control. Okay? Did you see the statement by Janet Yellen within the last month? Somebody asked her, there are we got debt buildup, we got all these issues. Do you think there will be another crash? And she says, well, maybe, but not in our lifetime. I thought, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. How about a parable from the year 750? I love this. This is hypernormalization. The parable of the man who has fled from an elephant. This is the story of a man who, in fear of an enraged elephant, has escaped into a pit, into which he has let himself down, hanging down and holding on to two branches at its edge. He looks down, and there's a dragon, its mouth open, waiting for him to fall, so that it can devour him. Then he raises his eyes to the two branches and sees two rats at their root, a black one and a white one, that are gnawing at the two branches untiringly and without flagging. And you see, that's what the picture is. While considering his situation and worrying about his fate, he notices near him a beehive containing honey. He tastes the honey, and its sweetness preoccupies him, and the delight of it distracts him from thinking about his plight or from seeking a means to escape. Thus he remains diverted, unaware, preoccupied with that sweetness, until he falls into the mouth of the dragon and perishes. Things have not changed. Here's this is my ultimate fear, SDRs and CBDCs. All right, what in the world does this mean? You remember Mark this morning said the U.S. is the last country in this chain that he gave because politically there's no more land to be taken over, et cetera, et cetera. They're all the reasons he gives, except maybe a one world government. SDR is the special drawing rights of the International Monetary Fund. The yuan was just allowed to be a part of that in October of last year. Break all the rules, but they put them in. So that is the IMF's attempt to create a single world currency, and it's been around for a long time. It's gaining strength lately. I'm in touch with a guy on a fairly regular basis who is working at, goes around the world constantly pushing this in order to create trade contracts and all the rest kind of stuff in SDRs. He doesn't know where I stand on this. I met him at a conference, and he and I have continued to be in touch because I try to figure out what the heck the IMF is doing, so he gives me all the inside scoop. I figure, this is cool. It's good on my screen. Okay. So sorry. All right. CBDC, while he comes, is central bank digital currency. And it's being developed around the world. Europe is ahead of us on this. Here in the United States, they call it FedCoin. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's not in operation yet. It's coming. Okay, what it is simply is using the blockchain that was developed for Bitcoin and allowing the central bank to do this instead of regionally or locally or for small groups, which is what Doug will talk about. So take that same technology and create digital money. Our money is digital today already anyway because of what we call bank money. The difference is that we will now be allowed to have an account at the Fed, which you're currently not allowed to have, okay? So what happens is everybody has only one account. That's all you need, okay? Because that'll handle absolutely everything. It's by the Fed. Isn't that wonderful? So you have one number, and all of your transactions will be through this one number. I heard about that once. And if you don't have that number, then you can't buy and sell. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Where did I read about that? Is this some Revelation book or something? Okay, now you combine that with SDRs, special drawing rights, okay, which is what Warren, his name's Warren Coates, which is what Warren is working on. Okay, so you combine the technology of blockchain in a central bank and run that with SDRs. Warren said to me, he says, Uli, we're not stupid. Okay, when the U.S. crashes, nobody's going to go around suddenly and handle everything in SDRs. We're not stupid. They're still going to be called U.S. dollars. Come on. I mean, I know the Americans. He is American. He says, we're still going to call them U.S. dollars, but they're not U.S. dollars. They're going to be SDRs. And we'll control them. Along with every other. Now, he says the small countries, and you know the small countries, Uganda or Zambia or Asia, well, we're going to call them SDRs. But in the U.S. or in Europe, we'll call them euros. In the U.S., we'll call it. It doesn't really matter what we call them. But that's what we're going to do. That's only possible with CBDC. And I should have. Do you want to give me my computer now? 1 minute. It's right behind. There's only 1 minute. I can't pull up my computer anyway. What I want to tell you is I believe this is coming. Not this necessarily, but there are choices. So there are two ways of looking at this, or there are two actions that I believe we need to take. One is to create models, and the other is to work on the system. To hold the system off and create as much righteousness in the system as possible, and also to recognize that when things are coming, we are ready. And the biggest way to be ready for us as a church is through service. Okay? That comes back to the community action councils and what it is. I've got more stuff there, but what it is that we can do. So each of us, I may be involved technically in what I do, but there's a community that I live in. Can I get involved now so that I have a voice into my community, especially from an emergency perspective? Back to what's happening with respect to a hurricane we just had. Okay, you need to start now because to build credibility in service takes years. Okay, start now. It's too late. when all of this actually comes down. There we go. Aren't you happy you missed half of what all my slides?
Didn't that help? The Statesman is actually built on the strategy of how to do what he's talking about. I want to end this in 30 seconds. Until World War II, the majority of all bank loans for houses were not limited to any more than 7 years. Until World War II, the banking system was generally in alignment with biblical principles. While we look at abortion and pornography and destruction of marriage and all the rest of that, while that is morally destroying the world, it's the financial system that is the real substance of what is being torn away from us. Because we Christians, we pastors, we Bible expositionalists did not understand the relationship between biblical principles and this stuff. And in the end, it's this stuff that the enemy is going to use against us to pull the rug out from everything else. Amen. All right, go to your focus groups, and we will see you later tonight.